You're listening to Stephanie and Fox, where we aim to educate, enlighten, and evolve your intimacy.
You can find us at evolveyourintimacy.com to learn more about counseling, self-study courses, intimacy, sex education, and the retreats that we provide.
This show contains discussions about relationships, intimacy, and sex, and is meant for those that are 18 years and older.
Now sit back, relax, listen up, and get ready to evolve your intimacy. So does the thought of BDSM scare you?
No.
Have you wanted to try elements of BDSM, but you're unsure how to really get started?
I bought a book.
Oh, Lord. Or have you wanted to spice things up in your relationship, but you're just really unsure how to communicate that with your partner?
I have nothing for that one.
Oh, boy. Today we're visiting with Dr. Courtney Padjen about how you can effectively communicate with your partner about your interest in BDSM, explore some small activities to get started with, nothing too crazy, and then really solidify it with just making that relationship contract and kind of making sure everything is on the up and up and no boundaries are crossed.
So Dr. Padjen is a PhD LAMFT, is a sex and relationship therapist and the owner and director of the Center for Sexual Wellness in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She's been featured in local and national magazines, including Lavender Magazine, Insider, and Cosmopolitan. Her ultimate goal in life is to live to see kink and BDSM related diagnoses removed from the DSM, and for kink and BDSM relationship dynamics to be taught in universities, diversity courses everywhere.
Absolutely. I think that is.
So for those of us that aren't licensed, what is the DSM? Let's start with that.
The Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5.
And what is that exactly?
So that is, it's all the acceptable mental health codes and diagnosis, and it tells us how to treat it, how to code it, kind of just everything about our field.
So
it's our medical book.
What they're trying to say is that if you're in a kink or BDSM type of relationship,
they're saying
that you have a problem.
They're saying that you have a problem.
Right. Well, then I have many, many problems.
Yes. Well, let's bring Dr. Courtney on because I want to hear her take on all of this and figure out exactly how she and I are going to work together to get BDSM-related diagnoses removed from the DSM.
Quick question before she comes on.
Sure.
Does that mean the chains that are bolted into our ceiling, is that in the DSM somewhere?
It could be, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, along with the handcuffs and...
the other stuff.
Yeah, that's hanging from our ceiling right now.
The butt plugs.
That's not hanging from our ceiling.
The ball gags.
That is not hanging from our ceiling.
The blindfolds.
Dr. Courtney, welcome to our show, and thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm well, yourself?
Oh, doing wonderful. Thank you for asking. And I hear that it's cold and rainy in Minneapolis.
It's definitely a nippy one today, for sure.
Well, we're enjoying here in Texas a brisk 90 degrees. It's a beautiful sunny day. Yeah. A little hot for my taste, but you know it's Texas.
You speak for yourself.
Yes. So, Courtney, can you tell us what got you into the field of human sexuality, specifically BDSM?
Sure. Well, I just had an interest right away in college. I remember meeting with the director of my program, and I knew that I wanted to be a therapist of some kind. Mm-hmm. And I'm from Wisconsin originally, and we got a lot of serial killers there. And when I was in high school, that's when like CSI and NCIS and like Law and Order were like really big. And so I was like, I'm going to be a forensic psychologist. But then I was always like the go-to person with friends and relationships. And I was able to talk about sex like without like flinching or like laughing. And then once I realized that not everybody is able to do that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that must be a skill of some type. So I went and I asked the director of my program, like, hey, Ed, is there such a thing as a sex therapist? And he was like, there sure is. Yes. And then he proceeded to tell me like how to go about getting all of the credentials I need to have such a job.
That is awesome. I agree with you. Sex has always been something that's just been easy to talk about for me too. So it just felt natural. I thought I wanted to be a couples counselor, but I am a couples counselor, but what does every couple need or have issues with sometimes? It's just kind of lent itself right to that.
Yep, exactly.
So today we're going to be talking about many different elements about sex. So before we get going, I want to establish like some definitions and just kind of get a common language going. So can you tell us the difference between BDSM and kink?
Oh, no. No, I will not take on that responsibility.
Okay.
Because it's just so, I feel like it's something that's so subjective.
Okay.
And there is like this spectrum where it's like, I consider things to be like some kink or BDSM light, and then there's like the more heavy stuff. So I guess in a nutshell, I just chalk it up to like unconventional sexual practice that some folks consider not to be the norm, but actually is more norm than not.
Sure. So would you agree that it's on a spectrum? BDSM is kind of on a spectrum?
I consider it to be on a spectrum. But again, that's my bias.
Yeah.
Because I consider something like, when folks are like, oh no, BDSM, like, ooh, that's, and then I think about it and I'm like, well, do you pull your partner's hair during sex?
Right.
Like that's, that's like a form of sensory play that increases sensations. Like, do you slap your partner's ass during sex? Like that's another one that's like impact play. And it's stuff like that where folks don't consider that to be an element of BDSM, and it definitely is. So that's why I say it's like a spectrum, because that might be more so like the more like acceptable, like low-key spectrum, whereas like, flogging someone to the point of like, maybe borderline blood draw and blisters might be on the other end of the spectrum. Or chains, as you guys mentioned, in your bedroom ceiling.
So let's just, everybody who's besides Dr. Courtney here, that is supposed to hold my yoga trapeze.
Lies.
And it did for many, many months. And so he changed it recently in a most recent play session. But traditionally, it holds my yoga trapeze.
Again, lies.
It does.
Dual purpose.
It holds the yoga trapeze when vanilla individuals are at the house.
But
it has many other functions.
It does. That yoga trapeze
many
is
other
very
toys.
versatile.
Great cover. Great cover.
Very, very versatile.
But to be fair, the majority of people that come to our house already know about us, and it's one of those sink or swim type scenarios.
Well, I mean, we're not just...
Well, you step through the threshold.
We're not crazy.
Good luck.
We know our limits with people.
So... what are some relationship let me ask that in a different way. What are relationship contracts? Is it similar to like a BDSM sub-dom contract, or what does that look like, and why should people consider them?
Even in non-BDSM and kink dynamics, I recommend folks have relationship contracts, primarily because oftentimes the underlying issue for folks coming to see me in the first place is communication. Mm-hmm. And so I call them relationship contracts, and then I say like we're going to have like certain clauses, and they're much like any other contract that you might create, where it'll have like only in the relationship contract you will have one for like finances, and for like if you are in like polyamorous relationship, it might have like, your secondary relationship on there. And what are like those dynamic sort of guidelines. And then there might be one for like communication. And then, going to the BDSM specific things, it might be like, these are, my limits, and this is what I am interested in. And this is like, just a very black and white way of saying like, these are ways that we're going to practice so that when to like slow down or stop, or this is our safe word. Some folks have verbal communications. I prefer black and white contracts that are like on paper, just because it's something where it's more easily amendable, where as you get new information that might change. If you develop a new area of interest, you might be like, oh, we got to implement that into the contract. Just so that if you're inviting other partners, it's, also something that you can share with other people so that they're in the know of everything they need to know. So everybody is safely practicing.
I love that. I know that communication is absolutely key in everything that we do. And so the relationship contracts, I like how you said that it's for everyone. It's not just for people who are in alternative style relationships or wanting to explore any sort of kink or BDSM, that relationship contracts can benefit all relationships. And so we're going to talk in just a little bit. We're going to kind of build one. But first, I want to ask kind of your opinion on some things.
Sure.
So we know that communication in any style of relationship is super important. But when we're navigating alternative relationships, such as poly, swinging, BDSM, kink, how do you feel like that communication should look differently from vanilla couples or couples who don't practice alternative relationships?
Well, I can't say that I think it should be any different. When I think about, polyamory, honesty and transparency are the bedrock of, those relationships. And I think that transparency and honesty should in an ideal world, we probably wouldn't have jobs if, those existed in all relationships. But I think that's, a key piece to just happy, healthy relationships is open, honest, and direct communication. So I don't think it's something that's specific to any particular dynamic. I think part of the reason it might make communication all the more important, because if it's not a traditional monogamous one-on-one relationship, communication is even more so emphasized because more parties are involved.
Yes, more parties are involved. And I love how that is, yes, every relationship should have great communication. We get that, but let's just face it, they don't. And so many of them come to us and we get so frustrated. I know I do. I'm not speaking for you, Dr. Courtney. I'm speaking for myself. I get so frustrated when they're like, well, I just wish this would happen. And I'm like, well, have you told your partner that? Well, no. Why would I tell him that? What are we here for? And so as you add more players to the game, when we're opening up our relationships or, playing however your dynamics look, that communication, I feel like, shifts to a deeper level, because then you have to communicate in order for everybody to be able to play the game and be safe, sound, and emotionally whole, I guess is the best way for me to say it.
Yep. Yeah.
So, Dr. Padjen, let's talk about communication for a second. How does communication differ within, let's say, a BDSM, kink, alternative relationship compared to a monogamous or vanilla relationship? Or do you feel that it does it all?
I think maybe the topic of conversation of, why communication is being had is maybe the one thing that is different, or the one thing that's obviously different. Just the factors of, how we're going to play, who we're playing with, what tools are we using, where do we want to go to play? Like, if we're therapists, like, can we play in our hometowns, or do we need to go to state over, like, and to plan for that? So that's the type of, like, maybe more involved communication that you might be having in BDSM, dynamics. And then, going back to the idea of folks who are like, no, we're just like vanilla and monogamous, like, but when you pull my hair, I will let you know if you are doing it the right way or if that hurts. And so we're going to talk about it. And, so I think it's something, how conversation is had might be different. And for the folks who are in the, so-called vanilla relationships that are engaging in the more BDSM light play, how they have their communication might be different in a sense that they don't know that they're necessarily talking about BDSM and making a verbal contract of like, don't slap me here, that hurts. Why don't you try this area? Open this hand. Don't close your fist. Stuff like that.
So what I hear you saying is these conversations are already being had. They just don't have them labeled as, I guess, kinky conversations.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Well, that's some great information. We will be right back with Dr. Courtney Padjen talking about how you can safely explore BDSM in your relationship.
Ladies, are you ready to take your intimacy to the next level? Head over to evolveyourintimacy.com to learn more about intimacy, relationships, and sex counseling.
And gentlemen, do you need a little bit more? Head over to our website to learn tips on how to communicate with that special someone and ignite that flame.
If you enjoy our content and guests and would like to help us grow, go to our website, evolveyourintimacy.com, to follow, like, subscribe, and comment on all of our social media accounts. Now, let's get back to the show.
We are talking with Dr. Courtney Padjen, talking about how we can incorporate safely BDSM into your relationship and just how that communication looks. So, I have a pretend situation. Okay? You looked at me crazy. You do that lately.
Anytime you say pretend, I get a little nervous.
Okay, so let's pretend we have a couple. We have Jack and Jill. They've been married for 7 years, and their sex life has hit a lull. It was good. They liked it. Now it's just kind of Jill would like to incorporate some elements of BDSM into their sex life, maybe some kink, but she's unsure about where to begin. Okay, so I know that there are listeners out there that can identify with Jack and Jill right now. And so I would like us as a team to kind of walk them through the process from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you recommend Jill start the conversation with Jack about her desires?
Well, I don't think that it's one that's an easy conversation necessarily. So if you're familiar with like PEP or a positivity sandwich, so like praise, encourage, praise, that I sometimes think is a great way to introduce new, sexual experiences that you might want to have with your partner, because sometimes partners will internalize if you're asking for something else or something different, that means you're not happy with me, versus like, let's explore and supplement to see like what new things we might like. So I remember there is a pep sandwich that I had wrote the other day about incorporating sex toys into oral sex. And I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, but it was something along the lines of, I love when you give me amazing head because you know where to hit all of my spots. I wonder what it would be like if we were to incorporate toys to see what the added feels might be, and if that would be an additional enjoyment. Because I think that it would supplement your already amazing head giving skills. So there's the praise, and then the sandwich, and then end praise. And then I'm like, you can always give additional praise at the end of that and be like, I might just explode out of my skin from sheer pleasure, just to put a little cherry on top.
So I guess we should jump in here. I don't have per se all of the same tools or education that you two have, as a RISE coach, which is relationship, intimacy, and sex education coaching. So normally what I would do is, I would first off ask Jill, have you had any sort of conversation or request based off of BDSM in the first place? And that could look many different ways. It could be a direct conversation. It could be a letter. It could be a flirtatious meme or text. It could be,
TikTok.
Exactly. A TikTok that you sent them. or it could be, foreplay, fantasy talk while you're engaging in sexual activity. That is a lot of, the questions I would ask up front. And then, of course, if or the majority of the answers were no, I've done none of that, I would encourage her to feed the seed, so to speak. It's like planting a little seed, allowing it to sprout, grow, take it nice and slow. Maybe start sending some memes or some TikToks. If, Jack says, hey, what's that about? Open that, that's that opening. Okay, well, I've been fantasizing about maybe you holding me down or spanking me or blindfolding me or what have you. If he's not quite ready, for that type of play, maybe just discuss it during sexual activity. Close your eyes, fantasize. How would you feel right now if I asked you to grab my hair, Jack, and pull it back and control my body or control my hips or. And that's how I would begin that conversation with her. Additionally, I would make sure that we incorporate something we call our sex menu, which is something that Stephanie created. And that is, it's a 3-tier list. On the left side, this is what I absolutely need in our sexual life and our sexual communication to feel loved, appreciated, sexy, like a goddess, what have you. Then there is the wants. I've been thinking about the following. It's been turning me on. I think I want to try these things. And then there's the last tier, which is the absolutely hell no. I am not interested at this time. Doesn't mean ever, but right now, the thought of that either scares me, it pulls up some type of, trauma response, or I've had a very bad experience with that, so I'm just not interested right now, right? And I would incorporate that immediately. What would you do?
I think the sex menu is very good too, because that's just like what Dr. Courtney said, the positivity sandwich. We're doing so many great things. I found this on the internet. Like, can we just fill it out and let's just see what we like and how we can enhance it? Using those words, enhance. It's already really good. I shouldn't say just. I would like to try this or to try that. But being really upfront and honest about what you want and how you want it, I think is key. It's very important to be able to say, hey, you know what? We're good. I still like it, even though we know she's lying. But still, Jack doesn't know that. And I would like to add this new twist to our relationship, our bedroom pleasures. Yeah? Okay. So, research is very important. And before beginning anything new in a relationship, how do you recommend the couples start researching this process for BDSM or just adding some fun elements for themselves?
So oftentimes I will give couples a yes, no, maybe list. So the yes, no, maybe list, I give them a vanilla and a kinky version of that list. And so they can go through it and figure out like what is, a very enthusiastic hell yes, what's a maybe, and what's a hell no. And then I also will give folks the BDSM quiz. So the BDSM quiz, there is like a standard version and then there's an extended version. And that's one where it will ask some, I haven't taken it in a while. So if my memory serves me right, it is graded on a Likert scale. Okay. On a 5-point Likert scale. So they spit out a very extensive list of like percentages of like high to low. This is where you come out. Like, are you a rope bunny? Like, are you a top? Are you a bottom? Are you like a dom, sub? Are you like a rigger? Are you a predator? So sort of things like that to get an idea. Because I think, especially if you don't know where to go, it might be good to get an idea of like, what does this inventory say? Because it is very thorough. One thing that I do recommend when folks take the BDSM quiz is do not make any assumptions that you know what anything is. I remember working with some individuals like several years back, and they were like, oh, the violet wand, like, I think I would like that. That sounds like a great vibrator. And I'm like, oh my God, like, no, do not put that inside of you. Like, Google is your best friend when you don't know what something is on the BDSM quiz. And, you know, there were even things I remember when I first explored it that I was like, what is this? So, you know, just stay humble. And it's definitely something where when you get a clearer picture of where your interests may lie, then you can do more research after that to get a little bit more specific as to where your niche might be.
That's a good point. So normally what I do is I will tell them to start with some, you know, very light ethical porn. If they're not into porn, and I do say ethical, don't just jump on Pornhub and start typing in BDSM dungeon stuff, because you're going to find some very excessive things. You know, there's also a lot of books out there. There's a lot of different websites out there from a lot of different professionals in the field. You know, everyone from someone holding a PhD to just BDSM practitioners that have been in the field for 20 plus years, that have been there, done that, and seen, and, you know, had it happen to them, etc. Another thing I tell them to start doing is start looking into, you know, BDSM families, so to speak. So those look many different ways. So I don't want to put out any incorrect information, but there's dungeons that people play at. There's groups that get together. Some call them families. I've heard an array of names for them. So just look for BDSM group on Google. A lot of the groups are very self-protective because of what BDSM entails. And so you're going to find, or what I have come to find in the past, is that the majority of people there are there for the right reasons. And the family as a whole, or the core, they are very protective of each other, especially with newbies coming in. So you get a lot of good, positive information.
Well, that, and then you explore and look for, like, on FetLife and stuff like that, and see if there's any munches around or places where you can learn, but you're not expected to play.
Yep. Yes. Yep.
That was the word. Yep. I couldn't get that word out of my mouth. I was like, what is that term? Yeah, I couldn't get that term out of my mouth.
Yeah, munches are very, very, very good. And just to get a basic understanding of what people are looking for, kind of their personalities. And it's not something, you're not going there to play. You're going there to meet people.
Yep. Yes. They're very informative. And I also, in addition to munches, there are other organizations. I'm not too familiar, like, of course, outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, but I can think of one organization, MSDB, the Lab. I'm the moderator of, well, I'm one of the moderators of that organization. And we have a monthly meeting where, again, it's not play, but we do have demonstrations that you would not be able to have, say, at Denny's during a munch. So the last one that we had before COVID, I believe, was urethral sounding, where we had two partners that came and they gave us a demonstration on, like, they gave a very thorough background of the history of urethral sounding, how to safely do it, and then they did a demonstration for us. And then they stayed after for, like, any questions. And we usually change topics every single month, depending on the interest of the people who attend.
Yeah, that's, I've not seen that in person, but it sounds very interesting.
You've experienced a lot of things in person, though.
I've experienced a lot of things in person. That is not one of them, but it's on my list.
So let's say Jack and Jill, they've had that, you know, that direct and open conversation. Some of it's been a little tough. They've been talking about what they're okay with, what they're concerned about, etc. They've done some research, right? now they're ready to create either, a relationship contract or BDSM contract or a blended contract surrounding that overall, right, scenario for them. Can you walk us through that process and what that contract would look like?
So I just give clients recommendations for guidelines, and things that they should consider, more so than actually filling it out with them, because I'm definitely very type A when it comes to contracts, and I'm very detail oriented, whereas some of my clients are like, no, I just need the gist.
Yeah.
So I send a hyperlink to 20 plus relationship contracts. And then we discuss like some of the things like that you may need to consider. And some of that might be like safe words for one. And how are you going to know when you want to like try new things, or even in your contract before you get to playing, you might want to have like a checklist of like, we need to take like X, Y, and Z course at this particular organization, institution, whatever, to really learn. Because I think of like say shibari. I know that in Minneapolis, at least, we have a lot of shibari exercises classes to teach people how to properly tie. And then we also have like pegging classes if you want to learn how to peg the correct way and, to be like just very gentle. So you might want to incorporate like, these are the courses that we need to take that might indicate that we are ready. And then, do we feel like our communication is sound? If there's going to be, water sports involved, like, do we have waterproof sheets ready and handy?
Water sports, I love it.
So just boxes that you might want to check, and just, guidelines that'll be helpful so that you can have a very successfully pleasurable experience. Much like having vanilla sex. Like, do you need to have a condom? Do you want to worry about having children? Like, is everybody safe? Do you have like toys within arm's reach? Like, setting up those parameters so that everything can be like fun, smooth, and enjoyable, but also to just focus more so on, well, not more so, but focus on the fun part, and accept that, like, just as with like vanilla sex, like in BDSM sex, you're going to like sometimes get some really weird noises, and just to expect like it's not going to be perfect the first couple times around, to stay humble, take note of like what works, what doesn't, and try again.
I like how you said that there's going to be some weird noises. There may be weird noises. There may be a weird smell because of something that, depending on what your activity is. And I know that it will be embarrassing at first, because it always is, but being able to feel safe enough with your partner and just kind of laugh it off, because it's going to happen again, regardless.
Yep. And that's another thing that might be, but I think is helpful to include in contracts is, how are you going to do your aftercare? If something embarrassing does happen, like to have that time afterwards to process, what was that like, and how can we do things differently going forward so that maybe this doesn't happen again? And it might not be something that is, preventable. As I think of like what's not preventable, and I was like, well, sometimes squirting is not preventable, it just happens. And just to process like how can we better manage the situation so it's just something that's embraced and not embarrassing.
And it's okay to say I didn't like that. We tried it and I didn't like it, because not liking something is just as much information as liking something, because then we know how to proceed.
Yep. Exactly.
So what are some of the pitfalls that you think that you feel like newbie couples make when beginning BDSM and all of that? And what advice do you provide for couples who find themselves in one of these pitfall situations?
Some of the pitfalls, I think, is when folks want to jump in too fast. Especially like when, if they see shit like the 50 Shades of Grey movie and they're like, oh my God. And then they just want to do like everything that they think, is like demonstrated in like the movie, or they read about someplace else. And, I think of, BDSM, and some of that is kind of like pole dancing, right? It can look very beautiful and elegant and easy, but it takes technique and it can be very hard. So one of the things that one of the community mentors had shared with me that I thought was really interesting was he made a like intentional decision to attend a year's worth of munches before ever entering the community.
Oh, wow.
Like, is that required? No, but he wanted to go in being very well vetted, having a good amount of information, and feeling confident in, going into this community and knowing that like I am, a safe person and like I can be vetted for, or just to slow down, be humble, and to not make any assumptions. You have to go in, I think, with an open mind. There are going to be situations where it's like, no, I don't want to go into an open mind, because that is a definite hell no. In those situations, it's a hell no. Because I don't think that this is anything where it shouldn't be coerced. Safe, sane, and consensual is one of their sort of mantras in the BDSM and Kink community. There's also a couple of other mantras that are similar, but the sort of underlying commonality between all of them is, consent and safety. So I think that's one of the things where another pitfall I think that's very common is when folks assume that in a dom-sub relationship that it is the dom that is in charge, when it's really the submissive, because they say yes, no, and how hard and when to stop. So even though they're in that submissive role, and that can be really empowering for some folks to learn as they're exploring these DS dynamics. So I think those are the more common ones.
Yeah, I love how you just said that. It's you're right. The sub is in control, and we've done so many shows about, dom relationship, or dom sub. I'm just combining it all. Relationships, and understanding that the difference between the abuse, actual sexual abuse, and a dom sub relationship, and that's because the submissive, he, them, they're the ones in control. And when you're watching that happen, you think that, it might be hurting them, but they have the say, they have the power to stop that. And it's just beautiful to watch. And especially when you have a submissive who is really shy and really trying to find their own, and being able to use their voice and find their voice in a scene is just powerful to watch as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm going to jump to a question here, because I think it falls in line with what we're talking about. What are some of the categories within BDSM that you feel newbies should begin with that are safer for the novice or the beginner, or those that are starting to learn about this type of sexual activity?
Well, I think that's kind of hard, because it depends on what they want to explore. Because immediately the first thing that came to mind was light bondage. Don't start with the handcuffs. Maybe start with like pantyhose or a scarf. Because handcuffs can be a little bit like, sometimes they're not comfortable. And then, you have to worry about like losing keys and stuff like that. Whereas if you do a scarf, it's just can be very easily, untied, and that might be like a step graduated before you buy like the bed harnesses that go underneath the bed, because those can be a pricier investment. And then, if you're dabbling with like impact play, you might want to try spanking before you invest in something such as like a paddle or a flog or a whip or a crop, because those, take additional training on how to use them safely, but they can also be a pretty pricey investment depending on where you get them and the quality of the product.
Ladies, are you ready to take your intimacy to the next level? Head over to evolveyourintimacy.com to learn more about intimacy, relationships, and sex counseling.
And gentlemen, do you need a little bit more? Head over to our website to learn tips on how to communicate with that special someone and ignite that flame.
If you enjoy our content and guests and would like to help us grow, go to our website, evolveyourintimacy.com, to follow, like, subscribe, and comment on all of our social media accounts. Now, let's get back to the show.
One of my favorite things is when we have the crops, because our daughter used to ride horses, and so we just have random crops around the house. And it's just when he barely taps it. I mean, you can just tap it on my neck, my legs, just kind of alternating it and just kind of tapping two together. That's so relaxing to me. It's not even sexual. It's just relaxing.
It is relaxing to you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's I love that.
So speaking of handcuffs, real quick.
Oh boy, is this the?
No, it's just a little trick.
Oh, okay.
So if and when you as a listener, you decide to go ahead and divulge and utilize handcuffs, give a key to the person in the handcuffs, and then have a key on you, and then have a third key somewhere within a neutral space. That's what I recommend when it comes to handcuffs. That way you don't run into those issues, and the person that's handcuffed feels that, hey, I can release myself anytime I want to. Mm-hmm. It's usually just a quick best practice.
Why don't I ever get a key?
Anyway.
Hold on. Why don't I ever get the key?
Because you don't need a key.
Oh.
That's why.
Oh, wow. So I know that you're big into research, and you have a research study that you're being part of right now. Can you tell us more about that?
So the research study is the International Kink Health Study, and it's put on by TASHRA, and TASHRA is a nonprofit organization. The leaders of it are Dr. Richard Sproat and Anna Randall, and they are amazing researchers. So they put together, I believe they started it in 2020 is the start of this current research study, and it's an expansion of a study they had done previously in 2016. But in this current study, they're researching physical and mental health, as well as childhood experience and sexuality and healthcare of those around the world with reoccurring fantasies that involve BDSM, kink, leather, and fetish. And it's going to be a long-term longitudinal study where we invite folks all over the world to engage in questionnaires. And it's going to be like over time to see like how this occurs over time, not like a one-time sort of, questionnaire where it's like there and you're done. It's going to show a picture of, participants over time and stuff that they encounter within, their life, their health, their emotional and mental health, and their BDSM and kink practice.
I love that. That people ask us all the time. They're like, so where's the research on, BDSM, kink, alternative relationships? And there is some out there, but there's not a whole lot. And the reason I feel like there's not a whole lot of research is because people don't really want to self-disclose. They don't want to say, oh, this is what I'm into, because of the stigma and the fear of being shunned by families or friends.
You're getting a glass of wine after we're done.
I don't even know. Thank you.
You need one.
But so people don't self-disclose. The research isn't there, so to speak. So this is beautiful. And we want to help promote that. So when it's up and running, please let us know, because we will put it out and let our listeners know and let them of test their journey along the way and keep track of it.
That'd be beautiful.
Yeah, I think another thing is, I know we sometimes hound on social media on its destructs and how it negatively impacts society as a whole. But I think the good thing when it comes to a lot of these new research studies is social media allows individuals to disclose without identifying if they want to, because, profiles can be created with any name, any moniker, any,
picture,
avatar, picture, what have you. And so I think that's going to come in a really, really handy here in the future with all these new research studies that are coming up.
Well, if they quit limiting the words like, sex, that might help.
Yeah, that would help if they allowed sex educators to actually get in there and use the words they need to. I would agree.
I mean, we're
not spelling sex with the number 3.
Yes.
Well, even with that, so we just got in trouble recently on the book face. See how I said it backwards? That way I can't get in trouble. There we go.
Oh, boy.
For using that exact spelling with sex. So now we're having to find different ways. Yep. So now we're using like the $, the number 3, and then a big capital X to make it obvious. So.
They can limit us, but we are creative people. You should see our sex lives.
We will overcome.
We will overcome. If you think that you can hold us down by not being able to spell that word, you're going to see how creative we can get.
Very true.
Very true.
Don't try and hold people that are in alternative relationships back, because it's our minds are what's the word?
Very innovative.
Yeah,
that's
very
a great
innovative
word.
is a good word, but and very creative, because we don't want to get bored. I think that's where a lot of this comes from, is we don't want to get bored. We constantly want to have new flavor, new spice, new things in our way. I know that Stephanie and I are both ADHD, and we are adventure seekers. And because of that reason,
we're adrenaline junkies.
I think I'm not. You are. I more just seek the adventure. Skydiving to me is like yoga at this point. But I definitely challenge all the social media platforms. Good luck. That's all I can say.
So as we're closing up, what are some of the takeaways that you want our listeners to walk away with tonight?
I think some of the takeaways would be to, definitely stay humble. Don't limit yourself. And, don't let your fear get the best of you. I think that's part of what inhibits us in exploring, is that fear factor, and finding out like, oh my gosh, what if I like it? And what's that going to say about me? And what is, like my partner, or like my mom, or my church, or, those sort of organizations and outsiders to think of me, as well as myself. Because I think part of the issue is not only stigmatization from, resources such as the Diagnostic Manual of Mental Disorders, but it also happens inside of us, because it is perpetuated by places like other people, church institutions, the APA, and to, just be really honoring of yourself and what it is that you want. And, are you trying to make everybody else happy, or is it just yourself? Like, do you know you, or do you want to know you more? And, when it comes to communication, definitely another area where like stay humble, because, not everybody is perfect. And we always, get into those pitfalls of like, oh, we've been together 10, 20, 30 years. Like, you should know. No, you shouldn't know. I'm not a mind reader. If I was a mind reader, I would be out of a job. Mm-hmm. Therapists would not exist. Yeah. So
I like how
communicate
you said
well,
honor.
have fun.
You said
Yes.
honor, and when you said honor, I was in my head, because you paused there, and I thought you were going to say honest, but that is pretty much the same thing. Honor your honesty. Ask the questions. Don't be ashamed to say, you know what, I really don't know what this is. Can we research it together, or can you tell me more? Because you don't know what you don't know, and nothing changes if nothing changes. So ask the questions and honor your honesty towards it all.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on something that Dr. Padjen just said. 10-year relationships, 5-year relationships, 20-year relationships, people's tastes change. Our viewpoints change. I can tell you, since I first started dating Stephanie to now, I'm a very different person.
Ooh, are you? I don't even know who you are sometimes.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but so you know what? You're still here. So I guess that's a positive. So, Dr. Padjen, tell our listeners where they can find you, how they can get a hold of you, how do they become a client if they want to, all that good information.
So I think the best platform to find me on is Instagram. It's Dr. Courtney Says. And I like to add that it's Dr. Courtney Says, because if you want to say some stupid shit and be like, oh, is my dick too big? My Venmo is also the same as my Instagram handle.
I love it.
That's great.
Yes.
Otherwise, if you're curious of services, my website is Center for Sexual Wellness, and center is spelled the British way. centerforsexualwellness.org. And then I also have a Facebook page where there are, I think, twice a week postings that are, able to be read by anybody. Otherwise, you can find me on LinkedIn. Same postings are made there. That's about everywhere I am. And I can only right now service therapy clients in the state of Minnesota. But if you wanted to do short-term sex coaching where it was more direct with directives, that is something that I would be able to do via my coaching services.
I'm really glad you said the Venmo part, because we get requests like that all the time, and I'm going to start using that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm the one that siphons through all the messages that come through the website for Stephanie. And the most recent one was something about the feet, right?
Oh, yeah. He wanted me to send him pictures of my feet. And so you told him. So Fox told him, send me some Louis Vuittons.
And that's not what I said.
What'd you say?
No, that was in his message.
Oh.
Like, this guy basically, I'm assuming it was a guy, basically sent an email saying, I've talked to all these other licensed professionals and psychologists and these beautiful, sexy women, and they're all mocking me, especially when I say, hey, I'll send you some new Louis Vuittons along with a couple $1,000s. And my response was, well, you're getting a hold of women in the field, at the top of their field, that have worked their butts off to gain their PhDs. They owe hundreds of thousands of dollars. Trust me, I know. My wife is one of them. And you're just jumping in there with no formidable relationship, no trust, and asking for some type of sexual kink that you just assume they're going to appease you with without any type of trust or conversation up front. I think you're going about this the wrong way, brother. That's pretty much what my answer was. But I think then I said, but if you want to pass a background check and send $10,000, I will have a conversation with my wife.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I said.
I'm cheap. I was just in it for the shoes. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
No, the $10,000 was just to hold a conversation with you and to run the background check.
Oh.
It wasn't a yes.
Well,
yeah.
I greatly appreciate you taking your time to spend some time with us this evening and our listeners, and helping them kind of explore a new avenue and the relationship contracts and all of that fun stuff that we talked about tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was great.
Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to our show. We are Stephanie and Fox with Evolve Your Intimacy. And remember, you're not in this alone, and we are here to help.
You can check us out at evolveyourintimacy.com, and if you subscribe to our newsletter, you will receive free resources monthly to help evolve your intimacy.
Have a good night.
Have a good one.